The rain fell in sheets across the parking lot of Arbor Glen Apartments, turning the pavement into a mirror of broken streetlights. Marcus Webb stood in the hallway in the middle of the night, his 7-year-old daughter, Lily, pressed against his leg, watching 2 maintenance workers stack their belongings beside the elevator. A plastic bin of Lily's drawings sat on top of a garbage bag filled with clothes. The building manager read from a clipboard without looking up, citing lease violations Marcus had never committed. When Marcus asked for just one more night so his daughter could sleep in a bed, the manager shook his head and walked away. Lily tugged her father's sleeve. She didn't cry. She just whispered, "Daddy, did we do something wrong?" Marcus had no answer. He picked up what he could carry and led her toward the stairs. High above downtown Chicago, in a corner office wrapped in floor-to-ceiling glass, Catherine Aldridge signed her name on document after document. The papers blurred together after a while. Lease terminations, vendor contracts, liability waivers, acquisition proposals. Each signature carried weight she had trained herself not to feel. At 34, Catherine had built Aldridge Property Group from her father's modest holdings into one of the Midwest's most aggressive real estate firms. She wore her authority like armor, tailored blazers and measured words. Every decision filtered through profit margins and legal exposure. She worked late because the next day's board meeting required her full attention. The Ashford Tower deal was worth $80 million. Nothing could jeopardize it. Her assistant, Derek, knocked twice before entering. He carried a leather folder and a cup of coffee she hadn't asked for. Catherine appreciated efficiency over thoughtfulness, but she accepted both. Derek placed the folder on her desk and hesitated, his finger resting on a yellow tab near the bottom of the stack. "This batch includes the Arbor Glen clearances," he said. 14 units flagged for expedited removal. Catherine flipped to the section without comment. Arbor Glen was a mid-tier property on the northwest side, recently acquired as part of a larger portfolio purchase. The building needed renovation before it could be repositioned for higher-income tenants. That meant clearing problematic leases, the ones with late payments, noise complaints, unauthorized occupants. Standard procedure. Standard. Legal reviewed these, she asked. All signed off. But there's one case, Unit 714. The violation is listed as unauthorized subletting, but the documentation is thin. I thought you might want to take a look. Catherine scanned this page. The tenant had been in the unit for 3 years. Rent paid on time until 2 months ago when he lost his job at a manufacturing plant that had closed without warning. The subletting claim came from an anonymous complaint, unverified by management. "Is the violation legitimate?" she asked. The regional manager says yes, but there's no photographic evidence, no secondary lease agreement, nothing concrete, just a complaint and a follow-up inspection that found a sleeping bag in the living room. A sleeping bag. Apparently, his daughter sometimes sleeps there when she's scared. The inspector interpreted it as evidence of another occupant. Catherine closed the folder. She understood what Derek was doing. He wanted her to pause, to ask questions, to treat this as something other than a line item on a spreadsheet. But sentiment had no place in asset management. If she second-guessed every eviction, the company would collapse under its own hesitation. "If legal approved it, process it," she said. "We can't delay the Ashford timeline for edge cases." Derek nodded slowly. "Understood. I just wanted to flag it." "You did. Now move on." After he left, Catherine returned to her signatures. She didn't think about Unit 714 again. She didn't picture the man standing in a hallway at midnight, holding his daughter's hand, watching strangers handle their possessions. She didn't imagine the rain or the cold or the look on a child's face when everything familiar disappears. Catherine Aldridge had learned long ago that imagination was a liability. She built her empire on facts, numbers, outcomes. Everything else was noise. She signed the last document and gathered her coat. The office was silent except for the hum of climate control. Chicago glittered below her like a circuit board, millions of lives reduced to points of light. Catherine had worked her way up from nothing. Her father's company had been failing when she took over at 26. She had no patience for people who blamed circumstance for their failures. Success required sacrifice, discipline, the willingness to make hard choices without flinching. Her driver waited in the basement garage. Catherine checked her phone on the ride home, scrolling through emails and market updates. The Ashford deal was on track. Her legal team had neutralized the last environmental objection. By next month, demolition permits would be approved and construction would begin. She arrived at her penthouse in the Gold Coast just after midnight. The apartment occupied the entire top floor of a pre-war building she had renovated 3 years earlier. It was beautiful in the way that expensive things are beautiful, carefully curated, impeccably maintained, utterly silent. Catherine poured herself a glass of wine and stood at the window, watching the rain trace patterns on the glass. She thought about the next day's board meeting, about the questions she would face, about the answers she had already prepared. She did not think about the families she had displaced. She did not think about Marcus Webb or his daughter Lily, who at that very moment huddled together on a fire escape 4 miles away, waiting for the rain to stop. The fire escape was not a choice Marcus had made. It was the only option left after the shelters turned them away. Full capacity, the intake worker had said, apologizing with tired eyes. Try again tomorrow morning. But tomorrow morning was hours away, and Lily was shivering. Her thin jacket soaked through despite Marcus' attempts to shield her. He had found this building by accident, a residential tower with an unlocked service entrance. The fire escape landing on the 6th floor was dry enough, protected by an overhang that kept out most of the rain. Marcus spread his jacket on the metal grating and pulled Lily onto his lap. "Tell me a story," she whispered. "The one about the house with the blue 00 door." Marcus closed his eyes. The house with the blue door was a story he had invented when Lily was 4. A place where everything was warm and safe, where breakfast appeared on the table each morning, and no one ever had to leave. He had told it so many times that he knew every detail by heart. The kitchen with yellow walls, the backyard with a tire swing, the bedroom where Lily had her own bookshelf filled with stories she could read whenever she wanted. "Once upon a time," he began, but his voice cracked on the second word. Lily looked up at him, her eyes dark and serious. "It's okay, Daddy," she said. "You don't have to finish." Marcus held her tighter. He had failed her in every way that mattered, lost his job, lost their home, lost the stability she deserved. His wife had died in childbirth. He had raised Lily alone for 7 years, working double shifts, taking every overtime hour available, building something that felt almost secure. Now it was gone, dismantled by people who had never seen his face, who had signed papers in offices he would never enter. The rain intensified. Water began pooling on the landing despite the overhang. Marcus knew they couldn't stay here much longer. Hypothermia was real, especially for children. He needed to find somewhere dry, somewhere safe, somewhere Lily could sleep without waking up colder than when she closed her eyes. He stood, lifting her in his arms. "We're going to knock on some doors," he said. "Someone will help us." Lily nodded against his shoulder. She had stopped asking questions hours ago. The building was old but well-maintained, with thick walls and heavy doors that muffled sound. Marcus climbed to the 7th floor and found himself in a carpeted hallway with brass numbers on each door. He chose the first one he saw and knocked softly, then louder when no one answered. He tried the next door and the next. Either no one was home, or no one wanted to respond to a stranger in the middle of the night. At the end of the hall, a door stood slightly different from the others, heavier, darker, with a small brass plaque that read simply PH for penthouse. Marcus assumed someone with money lived there, probably someone who would call the security the moment they saw him. But Lily was shaking now, her lips tinged with blue, and Marcus had no pride left to protect. He knocked for a long moment. Nothing happened. Then the deadbolt turned and the door opened, revealing a woman in silk pajamas, her dark hair loose around her shoulders, a glass of wine in her hand. She stared at Marcus and Lily with an expression that shifted from annoyance to confusion to something harder to read. "I'm sorry," Marcus said. "I know how this looks, but my daughter is freezing and my phone is dead. I just need to charge it enough to call someone, that's all. Then we'll leave." The woman didn't move. Her eyes traveled from Marcus's face to Lily's, taking in the soaked clothes, the chattering teeth, the desperate dignity in his posture. "Please," Lily said, her voice barely audible. "I'm so cold." Catherine Aldridge had not expected this. She had expected nothing beyond an empty hallway and the distant sound of rain. Now she stood face to face with the consequence of a signature, though she didn't know it yet. She saw only a man and a child, strangers in distress. Their presence was an intrusion she had every right to reject, but the child was shivering. The child had said, "Please." Catherine stepped aside. "Come in." just until the rain stops. The apartment was warm in a way that made Lily gasp. Marcus set her down gently on a marble floor that reflected the soft glow of recessed lighting. Everything was clean, expensive, untouchable. He felt like an intruder in a museum, afraid to move, afraid to breathe, afraid to leave water stains on surfaces that cost more than his annual salary. Catherine disappeared into another room and returned with 2 towels, thick and white and impossibly soft. She handed them to Marcus without comment. "Thank you," he said. "I'll just charge my phone and we'll be out of your way. The charger is on the kitchen counter. Help yourself." Marcus found the outlet and plugged in his phone. The screen flickered to life, showing a battery icon with a thin red sliver. It would take time to hold a call. He returned to the living room where Lily sat on the edge of a leather couch wrapped in a towel, staring at her surroundings with wide eyes. "This is a very nice house," she said to Catherine. "Do you live here all by yourself?" Catherine seemed caught off guard by the question. "Yes, I do." "Isn't it lonely?" Marcus reached for his daughter's hand. "Lily, that's not polite." "It's fine," Catherine said, though her voice had tightened. "I prefer it this way." She poured herself another glass of wine and sat in an armchair across from them, maintaining distance. Marcus understood. He was a stranger in her home, uninvited, unwelcome. The fact that she had let them in at all was more than he had any right to expect. "What happened to you?" she asked. "Why were you on the fire escape?" Marcus hesitated. The truth was complicated, filled with details that would make him sound like a failure or a victim. "We lost our apartment tonight. The shelters were full. We had nowhere else to go." Catherine's expression didn't change. "Lost your apartment? How?" "Eviction. They said I violated my lease, but I didn't. I've been there 3 years. Paid every month until 2 months ago when the plant closed. I was looking for work. I had a few leads, but they didn't give me time." Something flickered in Catherine's eyes. Recognition, perhaps, or something closer to discomfort. "You can stay tonight," she said abruptly. "One night only. There's a guest room down the hall. Your daughter looks like she needs sleep." Marcus started to protest, then stopped. Pride was a luxury he couldn't afford. Lily was exhausted, her eyelids drooping, despite the unfamiliar surroundings. If this woman was offering them a bed for the night, he had no right to refuse. "Thank you," he said. "I mean it. We'll be gone before you wake up." "See that you are." Catherine showed them to the guest room, a space larger than their entire apartment had been, with a bed piled high with pillows and a window overlooking the city lights. Lily climbed under the covers without being asked and was asleep within minutes, her breathing slow and steady for the first time in hours. Marcus stood by the door, watching his daughter rest. Catherine hovered in the hallway, her arms crossed. "I'll sleep on the couch," he said. "I don't want to intrude any more than necessary." "The couch is fine." She brought him a blanket and a pillow, placing them on the cushions without ceremony. Marcus sat down, feeling the leather give beneath him. It was the most comfortable surface he had touched in months. "I don't know your name," he said. She paused at the edge of the room. "Catherine." "Marcus, and my daughter is Lily." "I know. She told me when you were charging your phone." Marcus nodded. "Of course." Lily had introduced herself. She had always been braver than him, more willing to trust. "Good night, Marcus," Catherine said. "I hope tomorrow is better for you." "Thank you for everything." She disappeared down the hall. Marcus lay back on the couch and stared at the ceiling, listening to the rain against the windows. He didn't understand why she had helped them. People like her didn't help people like him, but he was too tired to question it. He closed his eyes and let sleep take him. Catherine didn't sleep. She sat in her study with her laptop open, searching for something she already suspected. Arbor Glen Apartments, Unit 714, Marcus Webb. The documents appeared on her screen, the same documents she had signed hours earlier. The eviction order, the falsified lease violation, the name of the regional manager who had processed the removal. She had done this, not directly, not with malice, but with indifference, which was perhaps worse. She had signed a paper that destroyed a man's life, a child's home, and she had done it without a second thought. Catherine closed the laptop and poured another glass of wine. Her hands were shaking. She told herself it was the cold, the late hour, anything but guilt. She had nothing to feel guilty about. She was a businesswoman making business decisions. The market demanded efficiency. Compassion was a luxury that bankrupted companies. But the child had said, please. The child was sleeping in her guest room, warm for the first time in hours because Catherine had opened a door. And now she knew the truth. that she was the reason that door had needed to be opened at all. She thought about what to do. She could pretend she hadn't seen the documents. She could let Marcus and Lily leave in the morning and never think about them again. The eviction would stand. The Ashford deal would proceed. Her life would continue exactly as planned. Or she could look deeper. She could examine the evidence that Derek had flagged. The thin documentation, the anonymous complaint, the inspection report that made no sense. She could find out if this was an isolated incident or part of a larger pattern. Catherine pulled up her email and began to type. She woke to the sound of the front door closing. Gray light filtered through the curtains. The rain had reduced to a thin drizzle. Catherine rose and walked to the living room where the couch was empty. The blanket was folded neatly, the pillow placed on top with precision. They were gone. Marcus and Lily had left before dawn, exactly as she had demanded. She should have felt relieved. Instead, she felt hollow. On the kitchen counter, beside the phone charger Marcus had used, lay a small piece of paper. Catherine picked it up and read the words written in a child's careful handwriting. "Thank you for letting us stay warm. You are very kind. I hope you find someone to live with you so you won't be lonely. Love, Lily." Catherine stared at the note. Something in her chest tightened, a sensation she didn't recognize because she had spent years learning not to feel it. She set the paper down and walked to the window, watching the city emerge from the morning fog. Somewhere out there, a man was carrying his daughter through empty streets, looking for a place to belong. And she had put them there. Her phone buzzed, an email from her legal team responding to her late-night inquiry. The Arbor Glen documentation was under review. Initial findings suggested irregularities in multiple cases, not just Unit 714. The regional manager, Victor Harlan, had been flagging tenants for eviction based on fabricated violations, clearing units for a premium renovation ahead of schedule to secure performance bonuses. Catherine read the email twice, then she picked up Lily's note and read it again. "You are very kind." She wasn't kind. She had never been kind. She had been efficient, strategic, successful by every metric that mattered. But a 7-year-old girl had looked at her and seen something else. Something Catherine had buried so deep she had forgotten it existed. She thought about the board meeting ahead, the Ashford deal, the questions she would face. None of it mattered the way it had mattered yesterday. Catherine opened her laptop and began composing a different kind of email, one that would tear down everything she had built on the foundation of her own indifference. Marcus found a day shelter on the south side that opened early. He and Lily ate breakfast at a long table with other families, other fathers, other children who had lost their homes for reasons beyond their control. The oatmeal was thin but warm. Lily ate without complaint, her legs swinging beneath the chair, too short to reach the floor. "Daddy," she said between bites, "will we see the nice lady again?" Marcus shook his head. "Probably not, sweetheart. She was just helping us for one night. I liked her apartment. It smelled like flowers. It was very nice. But she seemed sad, even though she has all those pretty things." Marcus looked at his daughter. She had always seen things others missed, the loneliness behind luxury, the pain beneath politeness. "Some people need time to find their way," he said, "just like us." Lily nodded, satisfied. She finished her oatmeal and asked if there was more. There wasn't. A few days later, Marcus received a phone call from a number he didn't recognize. He answered cautiously, expecting a collections agent or a scammer. Instead, he heard a voice he had only heard once before, in a penthouse apartment on a rainy night. "Marcus, this is Catherine Aldridge. Please don't hang up." He almost did. The name meant nothing to him, but the voice triggered a memory. The woman in silk pajamas, the towels, the guest room, the cold efficiency behind her hospitality. "What do you want?" he asked. "I want to meet with you. There's something you need to know about your eviction. Something that changes everything." Marcus hesitated. "I'm listening." "Not over the phone, in person. There's a coffee shop on State Street called Groundwork. Can you meet me there tomorrow at 10 a.m? I'll be there." The coffee shop was crowded with morning commuters, but Catherine had secured a corner booth away from the noise. She wore a gray blazer and no makeup, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. When Marcus arrived, she stood to greet him, then seemed to think better of it and sat back down. "Thank you for coming," she said. "Can I get you